Well, okay, we're half an hour in. That's one segment. We have two more segments of people to join us. And in a moment, I'm really excited that our next guests are going to help us examine some different forms of leadership. Seeing leadership as a verb, as an action, as really a way of being in education. First joining us is going to be Dr. Dina Ocampo, who's a renowned researcher and educator, a champion for literacy pedagogy development, and a former undersecretary at the Department of Education in the Philippines. It's really exciting to have her join. And when Jim and I were discussing this event, we were so thrilled that she would be coming in to join us. She's just turning on her camera now and is going to pop up on her screen, and I'm thrilled that she's with us. I also want to say Ohayo gozaimasu to Kazuya Takahashi, who is a teacher from Tokyo, Japan, whose work combining literacy methods with design thinking and Lego earned him a spot in the 2016 Global Teacher Prize Top 10. It is so exciting. It's been a few years since I've been face-to-face with Kazu, and so it's so exciting to have him with us, and also Dr. Dina to be joining us. So welcome to both of you. We're going to start with a question, and these questions, are special because we're thinking about leadership and getting action underway with our first guests, and now here we're going to talk to you about these different ways that we can discover that leader element in ourselves. So, Dr. Dina, I'm going to ask you this question first. How do you think that teachers can seek and find that leader in themselves? Especially in the current situation that we have right now. We're all facing a challenge with the pandemic, but maybe there's no better time for us to be looking within to find that leader. How can teachers be doing that? I think we've lost Dr. Dina's audio just for a moment. So why don't I go to Kazu to answer the question first? How can we find that leader within?
It's really difficult. Oh, by the way, good morning, everyone from Tokyo. Ohayo gozaimasu. I'm Kazuya. It's a really difficult question. I have been thinking about it for a few days. But everyone tries to copy the leadership. Like I don't know, maybe Winston Churchill, Bill Clinton. I don't know. There's so many leaders on magazine and books, right? And you guys are a teacher, maybe you guys are a key teacher, you're just keen to knowing a lot of leadership stuff, and then you just after finishing just right before finishing reading the book, you realize, oh, this is not my way. This is totally impossible. You see the gap. You're here. Your leader is here. There's huge gap. You're just overwhelmed. Oh, yeah, stop. Right. So I think leadership is not just copying great person. You can find yourself, and there you have a totally different kind of strengths of characteristics. You're like other person. You want to third person. So there are two different kinds of leadership, right? One person is trying to lead your followers, but the other you try to give initiative to them, and you try to serve. Right? So there's totally different kinds of leadership. So don't copy the models. Just try to find your strengths. And there's totally diverse, value system. So try to, first of all, find your values and also strengths. Then you can find yours, kind of sense of aspects of leadership in yourself.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you describe you can lead from out front, you can lead from within. And my background as a music teacher, my job all the time was to lead from up front, conducting the band, the choir, the orchestra. And it's a very different kind of feeling when we sit in the group or we stand back to figure out how we motivate that leadership. I like that you've drawn that kind of comparison. Thank you for that. Dr. Dina, we've got you, and I hope we have your audio okay once you're unmuted. If you can talk a little bit about how you think teachers, especially teachers perhaps early in their career, could pursue leadership or find that leadership quality within themselves.
Yes, thank you. First, good morning, everybody from Manila. Hello, Kasu. Good to meet you. I met Mark earlier. Just to share, I think that novice teachers or young teachers can find strength in themselves first as confident teachers in their classrooms. I think this is a very important fundamental, that teachers should feel that in their classrooms they are able to manage their classes, their lessons, their students in ways that make them creative, critical, engaged. And I think that's where it all begins for a teacher. I think that it's in that classroom that teachers feel and see the good that they do every single day. So if the question is how can a teacher find the leader in him or herself, I think that's the first point of entry.
You
um,
you just mentioned something I find also very interesting. You know that we as teachers we get the privilege of teaching children, and because of that, every action that we take as we model leadership, like you said, we can see the results. We can see that response. And I mean the reality of being a teacher, and I know Kazuya can talk about this a lot, is it can't be about evaluation. It has to be around assessment and our ability to read the room and understand. I
mm,
demonstrated this leadership. I chose this approach. Let's see, what feedback did I get that was obvious or that was maybe not as obvious, that was body language, not verbal. Those kinds of things
mm,
can be so important for us. So I appreciate hearing that, and especially tying it to what I know Kazoo is well known for in really understanding that there's so much more to education than just evaluation kind of points. I wonder, in the context that we're currently facing right now, where teachers in the Philippines are disconnected from their students, and because they're not in the classroom, but they are finding interesting ways to stay
mm,
connected and to keep
yeah.
connected through community, perhaps through through TV and radio and visits into to students' homes. What are some of the things that you're seeing, Dr. Dina, in the Philippines right now that are really good examples of teachers discovering this leadership opportunity and demonstrated professionalism?
Right. Thank you for that question. I think that I'll relate it to my answer to the first one, right? It's because you need to draw strength from confidence, I think. Being a confident teacher makes you become confident to try or enter into new horizons, so to speak. So if you are confident, for example, as a math teacher, you know your stuff, you know your content, you know how to play around with it, because that's the core. You If you are what they say, a master of your subject matter, you can look at that subject matter from the lens of digital media, you can look at it from the lens of print media, you can look at it from the lens of no media at all,
Mm,
and you can find ways to bring it forward. I think that some of the teachers I've been speaking to over the last few months, um, their concern more than their subject matter is connectedness. How do they how do they get connected with their students again and their fellow teachers? And I think those who who blaze the trail, those who start reaching out, those are they're the ones with innate leadership that they don't even recognize. They just look at it as, I'm making connections because that's what human beings do.
right.
But the first people who do it, those are the people who've actually decided in themselves that they're strong, and then they can move forward and help others and hold hands with others even from a distance.
Hmm.
I think that deserves to be recognized. One of the stories I frequently tell is that during one of the worst typhoons in the Philippines, the Haiyan, the
Mm,
Yolanda,
yeah.
um that tsunami that devastated an entire city, no, island. The children, when they didn't know where to go, they went to their teachers. They went to the homes of their principals or their teachers, and because that's where they felt safe. And I think that example is such a strong example of how teachers have become leaders for these children.
Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
it's that response to that
Mm,
moment that allows teachers there to say
mm,
Region 8 is great. And we recognize that the role of a teacher is not just attached to the
mm,
school day, it is attached
mm.
to the whole community existence. Now,
Yes.
one of our viewers, Farrellyn, made a comment about the fact that when we have these challenges, it helps us, recognize how alive we are and what
Mm,
strengths we have to overcome them. And sometimes we don't always know those skills are there until we're pushed to look at them and consider them and reflect on them.
mm.
Kazu, could you talk a little bit about your experience, of course, in Japan, about what teacher leadership looks like, and what forms of leadership can teachers be focusing on, maybe as a starting point, or maybe as a way to grow as a professional?
Wow, it's really big. I was expecting the same question as you gave to Dina. It's like I was like, I've been thinking about it, but I still got a totally different question. Like,
It's a
oh no.
surprise.
Well, you're challenging me. I know. Well, um, as I said, it's totally different kinds of leadership you have in yourself. So a novice teacher or young teachers can find themselves. But basically, the most important role of teachers is to take care of your students in front of you, right? But if you're not, that is not teaching. If you're not like, if you think yourself is just like your role is just teach subject, maybe it's not your you're not suited to your teaching job. Your teacher is much more than your teaching. Actually, teacher means much more than just teaching subject, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you just say you have to be a model for students. I mean, they're just the next generations, right? So your role is not just like you're cramming knowledge. You're just passing knowledge to the next generation. Your role is to lead them to the right way. I don't know. There's the right way. There's our right way, right?
Yeah.
But you need to do your best. So you need to just devote your full commitment to your teaching job. That is the first thing. I don't know. There's a leadership, as I say, like a strong leadership, or just full servant leadership, whatsoever. But first of all, you need to find yourself. Are you just 100% committed to your job? We're just doing this on the side of business. We're just making money for this. You really wanted to devote your life to teaching or leading the kids for the next generation. That is an important starting point. I think that is a starting point.
Mm-hmm. There's something you said at the beginning of your answer that caught my attention very quickly, about starting with the students because they're the ones in front of you. And as much as we all know that skill development will rely on teachers scaffolding the learning experiences and sequencing them out in a way that creates this continuous generative empowerment, and that's how we cultivate leadership in our classrooms. I just found it so interesting that starting point statement you made is so clear. Start with the students; they're the ones in front of you. Dr. Dina, you come from expertise in literacy pedagogy, especially around dyslexia, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience in showing leadership in that particular specialty area. I'm a music teacher, so I haven't had the same professional development or teacher education around certain literacy pedagogy. And so how have you taken that specialist knowledge and shown leadership to others to further expand the the professionalism of others to help students that might have a literacy need?
Right. Thank you again for that question. I just want to start off by saying that um, I got into it because I had a student in grade two when I was a grade two teacher who, for the life of me, I could not get him to learn to read. Um, On a Monday he would be doing his CVCs, his words, but on the next day, on the Tuesday, it would all be done and gone, and we would have to start all over again. And that's how I started to wonder if the training I received as an elementary school teacher wasn't working for this guy. What sort of training did I need? So I think that's the first key point, is to remember that when things don't work out in a classroom, the first person you question is yourself. Yes, not the child. It's never the child's fault, especially little children. Maybe these high school students, you kind of think a little bit more, right? But for younger children, you need to entertain the first hypothesis you entertain is your own inadequacy or lack of planning or lack of preparation. Um, I think that propelled me to study further. And that's where I met people who were looking at the same thing, no? And together with a friend of mine, her name is Mylene Paterno. She's still a teacher, and she's working with a school now. She taught me a lot about this reading disability, and she had herself trained as well. And so I was taught by her. And then that's how it started. The two of us, we taught others, and now we're teaching others in different ways. And so I think it's important to know that together we would say that our goal is to be redundant. Our
Mm,
goal is that there are so many people who are carrying it forward that the two of us become unnecessary. And I think that pretty much we're almost there. There's a good cohort of teachers working on literacy difficulties and dyslexia. And I think that's one indicator, I think. And listening to the first session or the first segment, I heard both Jim and Nadia say that they start with a vision. And so it's the same thing. You start with the vision. I want all to see all Filipino children, all children of the world, in fact, reading and enjoying it. And so if that's the vision, I think you just keep going for it.
mm,
And the other thing I wanted to say, related to what Kazu mentioned earlier, is that there's no one right leadership. I think that's a very important point that I have to thank Kazu for bringing up. Because as a teacher, you need to see your students for who they are, not for what you want them to be. So, sure, you want to take them to better skills, more joy, more fun in learning, but
mhm.
each of them will have their own way of getting there and doing that. And I think that's a very important insight. If you want to become a good teacher, a leader teacher, then we must all recognize that the children and fellow teachers, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
are different and diverse. And that diversity is very important. To recognize that diversity means you lead for inclusion, and you lead for togetherness, and you lead for accepting others. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating how we recognize our own strength, our own capacity, and what we're drawing in from other people, and just that idea of the right way, a right way, many options, many pathways to get to where we want to be. There's a lot of ideas. It leads me to think about a T-shirt that I have and a question that I have for Kazoo. I have a T-shirt that has some Lego bricks, and it says 6 bricks, a million ideas. And I wonder, when it was you came to the classroom with this idea of using Lego to connect students to something bigger. Specifically, I think it was around project management and how they could work on very intricate collaborative projects, but using something as a tool like Lego that they would be very familiar with. That probably felt like an unusual method or an unusual approach. And yet now, a few years later, I have all of my Lego my duck kits that I use for professional development workshops that I do, I have them right here. Lego has become something that's so special for how we teach design and communication and thinking. So tell me a little bit about what your experience was like as you experienced or explored a new frontier by using Lego as this design method.
Wow, it takes an hour to talk about it, but we have only 10 minutes, right? I need to complete the show, But it's, someone was actually wrote on the comment. Also, Dr. Dina just mentioned like I think the greatest lesson I learned as a teacher in my life is there is a diversity. I mean, there's all students are different. If I use metaphor like that's Dr. Dina is a professor of literacy. Literacy and pedagogy, right? So there's not a normal, like each student reads differently. Each student can decipher the letters totally different way. That means there are some students with dyslexia. They're just normal person. I mean, no, it's normal. Just students can read it, right?
Yeah.
As if you use a music metaphor as a music, Mark is actually orchestra leader, right? Leadership is just like a conductor. If you want to make a good harmony, you need to know there are various kinds of musical instruments. If you see I use only violin, that is not leadership, right? So orchestra is you need to make a good harmony by seeing there are a lot of differences, because not just difference of musical instruments, also there's a quality of difference in each person has, right? Mm-hmm. So leadership is something like you need to see the difference and try the best by using that kind of difference and then make a good kind of work. The Lego is something like that. There's a lot of different kind of pieces, right? But if you think about it, some ideas and something you want to create, you need to use them. Mm-hmm. They're different pieces, but you need to use them, right? But you can create it. Same. Leadership is just like making something using a Lego, right? So leadership is not difficult. Leadership is not just like you can learn from just copying a great leaders in the world. Mm-hmm. Leadership, you can learn leadership just from Lego. It's very simple. Just go right after this talk. Just go to shop and buy Lego.
Mine's all over the floor right now. Everything looks organized, but over here there's a lot of Lego being played with. I find it interesting, when you think about different ways to get to the same destination, different solutions, different options. I was fascinated when I realized, and it was only about a year ago, that when you take a Lego plate and you turn it like this, that it will fit in between the pieces on top. It can stand a different way. Is that how Lego is designed to be used? No. But does it work? Yes. And it's a different way to design and to use those same tools in a different way. And when I think about what you do, Dr. Dina, with novice teachers and helping people see opportunities, it's all about recognizing that we can use a skill we have for a different purpose or a particular tool in a different way, and we get such incredible results out of it. So I want to ask each of you sort of a bit of a quick question before we get to the final one. If we think of leadership as a verb rather than as a title, what does that mean for you, and especially for the people that you're working with? Dr. Dina, why don't you answer first?
If leadership were a verb, then I would probably say it means reflect and act. Because you just can't go acting and moving and instituting things without really thinking through it first. And when we reflect, that means we listen, not only to ourselves, right? But to everyone who will be affected by any action thereafter. This is one of the lessons that I tried to imbibe and learn while I was at the Department of Education. It's the same lesson applied in a larger context. It's the same lesson which I learned as a classroom teacher. And I think that that's what should empower teachers, honestly, is that what you are in your classroom, what kind of leader you are there, that's the same principle applied in different contexts. If you become a principal, if you become a superintendent, whatever you become after, it's that same principle of thinking, listening, reflecting before acting, and then doing it all over again. It's what Freire told us to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a constant cycle over and
it's a
over.
cycle. Yeah.
It's exciting to hear how you talk about that, because it's broken down into simple, understandable pieces, how they all work together. So the same question for you, Kazu. What does that difference mean when we think about leadership as a verb rather than as a title or a position?
I think everyone said the same thing. In the first segment, actually, Nadia actually mentioned the importance of making a journal, right? Taking a note of your life. So leadership is like a journey. It's not a state of being. It's just a state of action being. So you need to always moving forward. They also need, as just Dina mentioned, like you need to also reflect what you did. So it's a kind of reflective questioning. It's like always you need to do something, always think about it. It's two wheels, and you need to think about it.
Yeah.
So leadership is not just doing, I do it, but do it, reflect, do it, reflect. It's just a journey. I think it's the best way to grow as a leader. I'm not good a leader, but the good leader, if you want to, as I said, if you want to develop your leadership in yourself, I think the best way is to take a journal or take a note of what you did in last class, next class. You need to think about it. How can make myself better in the next class, something like that.
Yeah, and it occurs to me that the word journal and journey share a lot of letters in common, and I'm sure that they share an origin, and so that connection between the two shouldn't be lost. We should keep that in mind. It's time for me to ask the final question of the segment, and so as I ask both of you this final question, just like I asked Jim and Nadia earlier, I hope the audience is commenting, but maybe it's worth tagging or mentioning the people who empowered you. Let us know how special it was, and let them know how special it was that they are your power source, that they helped ignite and lift that up in you. So I'll ask you first, Kazu. And it is so good to see you on screen and to share this time together. But my final question for you: who empowered you? Who is that person who helped you see how much power you possess?
Well, there's actually a lot. There's no one. There's not just one. Of course, my family and my wife and my son. My best friends. There's actually good. Really, recently I had really good moment. Actually, we in Japan, we started like Global Teacher Prize Japan. Then we did like a crowdfunding actually, and then I thought at first, it was we getting a little. So I thought, man, I think I cannot make it. But later, my best friends actually tell me, message me, if in the last moment, if it doesn't reach the point, just tell me. I can fund everything. So I was like, phew, it's like, I don't know. That best friends actually is not. Best friends always actually support me. Don't think yourself. You are just by yourself. You are supported by many, many people. Like your family. Your family. And your friends. So always you need to think about them. You need to thank. You need to be humbled.
Yeah.
Even in this situation,
Yeah. Well, and especially right now, as we're all spending so much more time in our own homes and with fewer people face to face, it's it's so even more important that we're keeping connected with those people who fuel us and who inspire us to keep finding new ways to engage that power. So Dina, Dr. Dina, the same for you. Who empowered you? Who's that person who helped you recognize and realize just how much power you possess?
Well, to begin with, it would be mom and dad, wouldn't it? Right? um, uh, they let me be as stubborn as I wanted to be, and they allowed me to try different things within limits, of course. So mom and dad were very instrumental in allowing me to discover things about myself. I also read voraciously as a child. Um, and so all those people I met through these novels and these stories, they empowered me. They gave me they up to now they give me a vision of what can be. And as even as I read more, I mean, not only fiction as well as nonfiction, as I read, then your mind opens up. And I think the third one, similar to what Kazu has shared with us, I think that an important message in terms of who empowers us um, are the people we work with every day. They
Mhm.
empower us. Yeah. So children or co-teachers or bosses or supervisors, whoever they are, even your critics, they empower you. And I think that's a very important thing, that there's nothing wrong with the disagreement, because that forces you to think and reflect
Mhm.
and assess, and that it is a process of empowerment. I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think that's a very important thing to remember. You start with a position of strength from mom and dad, but after that, that's you create that, you build that forward, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for giving us ideas that are very easy to act on. You've made suggestions that, it's the evening for me, but it's just getting started in the day for you. Now have all day to think about what it would mean tomorrow to put even just one of these ideas into a new routine, to start forming it as a new habit that can be a powerful influence in what we do for ourselves and across our community, our country, global networks, whatever it might be. So I just want to say to you, maraming salamat, arigato gozaimasu, to both of you. It's been very exciting to have you.
Maraming
Thank,
salamat.
thank you both.
I hope you answered that question later, Mark.
I might.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Thanks,
Thank
Dina.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you.